Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome everybody to another episode of Mido and Baba.
It has been a while.
It's been a while. We're back.
Mido's much taller now.
Yeah.
How old are you, Mido?
I'm 18,
What's happening with you? Where are you?
about to go into college.
Woo!
Yeah, finishing up my senior year. So, okay, we'll start with calling people out. In light of college, a lot of people are writing their college essays, as I'm sure you know. And a lot of my friends have been making jokes that I don't think are complete jokes about their lives not being super interesting, or more accurately, that they hadn't suffered some major trauma throughout their life to make their life interesting enough. And I know that that probably is actually pretty true for a lot of people who all have their own challenges but may not have the most interesting backstory or most interesting, unique experience in life.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is that a smart way to think and think, my life is not super interesting because my family or I haven't gone through a bunch? Or is it merely just it's okay? Or what would your advice be to those kinds of people?
This is, I think, just the result of inexperience in life. Um, yeah, there are people who experience tragedies and they tell the story of their tragedy, and that sounds really interesting. But that's not, um, it is not the external events that makes the person. It is what is inside of this person. So, for instance, telling the story that of privilege, that being aware that you have privilege, and being aware that you confront very big moral questions because the fact that you were born into privilege, you enjoyed privilege, uh, and the fact that you've had that privilege, what type of moral obligations and duties does it impose on you? So, writing an essay saying, for instance, that the truth of the matter is that, I am aware that I haven't confronted challenges in my life because I've been born into privilege, raised into privilege, but have very serious questions about what moral obligations does this impose on me, and what do I do about hardship in life that others experience, and whether I am in a position to help these people, to help people, and how to help people, and talking about the moral awareness of what follows from privilege. That's as interesting
Yeah.
as telling some type of tragic story. And the other thing that, um, life will give every person their share of hardship. It's just a matter of when.
Right.
I remember when I was in your age, and I used to sometimes tell my parents, um, I'm worried. And they say, why are you worried? Because, everything in my life has become very easily, and, I feel guilty because I haven't had hardship. And I wish I could go back to this person, that 18-year-old, and tell this person, uh, you have no clue how much is waiting for you in life. You know, that your turn will come, and life is going to give you your share of blows. And the real question when God has given you at the beginning of your life so much, is what type of preparation are you making to become the type of human being that can withstand the moral blows that's going to come later in life, because they do come. And it's a rare human being indeed that can go through entire life without ever experiencing.
And I know you say a lot that that is a challenge in itself, right?
Yeah, it is. Um, but it's like, if someone hasn't in high school made their life meaningful, well, it's part of what you start in college is this journey of, okay, how do I make my life meaningful, and taking schoolwork seriously enough so that you are learning about, there are people who can go to college and they only take classes that basically help them get a profession, make money. That's it. And then there are people who go to college and they take a a range of courses that teach them about other people.
Right.
Whether courses that teach them about, you know, the urban centers in the United States, or courses that teach them about underprivileged classes in the U.S., or courses that teach them about human rights issues in the world, or environmental issues in the world, or hunger issues in the world. And it's all what your attitude is when you go to college. Are you, taking advantage of college as an opportunity to grow morally, or are you just interested in getting a job, making money, and taking care of just yourself?
Yeah. And I do have a lot of friends who are very interested in just getting out of college and making a six-figure income, and probably just not finding a ton of fulfillment in their life and just finding fulfillment in the money. So I think I have a lot of friends who could hear that.
Yeah, the 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 world. The thing is that we are increasingly living in an integrated world.
Mm.
So maybe 100 years ago, you could just worry about getting a job and making an income and ignoring the rest of the world. Nowadays, part of your future is what is going to happen around the globe. So, like, I was reading a report about how uh, scientists are really worried because the ocean in this last year has risen like 5 inches, and like a level of increase that they've never witnessed before, and like the serious implications of that. Well, all these people who just think that they're gonna just get jobs and they're all gonna be, we all as human beings on this globe are going to be impacted.
Right. Yeah.
All of us.
I mean, it's what there was that study that came out a couple years ago that said like by 2047 the world's going to be very different and possibly destroyed because of global warming. And
I mean, we are getting to a point where all of us, it's either are going to recognize that we live in a little village that we all have to take care of, or life on this earth is not going to be sustainable, and then everyone is in trouble. And but it's remarkable because so much of what happens in this world depends on what the attitudes of human beings are. Like, there are a lot of things on global issues that were influenced largely not because of governments, but because of average human beings who got involved in NGOs and non governmental organizations that lobbied for one goal or another, and it had an enormous impact. Like, for instance, medicine for AIDS. If governments would have had their way till today, the vast majority of people would not have medicine for AIDS,
Yeah.
for HIV available, because it's extremely expensive. It's lobbying by just common people that force governments to make the medicine much more available than before. But these stories, you'd never hear about them in the media. You never. But they're very much a real part of life. Um, People can make a difference if they're serious about it and if they're committed.
So dedicating yourself and having,
Yeah.
I guess, not even the motivation, but the discipline to work towards.
Discipline is 70%. I mean, being motivated is 30%, but being disciplined, because it's regularity and consistency, and it's like a lot of people in power, they count on the fact that people will just get discouraged and go away.
Right.
But if you are constantly in their face and you don't give up and you wear them down, um, in many, many situations, they eventually give in, because
Right.
they get the point, you're not going to go away. They're not going to be able to send you away. But like I read another report that said, this one was coming from England, and it said that um, child pornography sites in England have reached, like, the they have increased to the greatest level there ever been since the invention of.
The
Uh,
internet.
and I think to myself, that's because people don't care. I mean, if people really lobbied
Yeah.
and basically sent the message consistently to politicians, unless you do everything possible to close down these child pornography sites and send the people who are behind them to prison, we're not going to make go away, and we're going to keep embarrassing you and confronting you and protesting you and making your life a living hell until you take action. Things would be different.
But that's something that I struggle with, like passivity, like because I don't know, a lot of the values to me growing up was being kind, being humble. I mean, you raised me, but and just being nice to everyone. But at what point should you stop being nice and start being active and not allowing for people to just take advantage?
Well, I mean, it's there's no inconsistency, because you are nice to, uh, you know, away from the battleground. You're a very decent, nice human being to everyone. Because but when you get involved with issues, you get involved with an issue like environmental destruction or human trafficking or, uh, like we said, child pornography or something like that. You're putting on your battle gear. You're
Yeah.
putting on your battle personality. You're not putting on your regular personality.
Putting on your teacher voice.
Yeah, and you're saying, okay, I'm here not to be your friend. I'm here because there's something wrong that I want fixed. And there's a world of difference. You don't treat normal human beings. You're never going to have friends if you basically approach people like, I'm here to fix you.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about. No, you're normally you're just you're here to be the best type of companion to people that you can be. But when you get involved in a battle, you put on your battle gear,
Yeah.
and you're ready for the fight. Um, but it's really in like I've learned very quickly in college that if you look hard, I mean, if you look around, you discover that there are literally groups that are active on so many different issues, and it's people's apathy that prevent them from getting involved in issues. It's
Yeah.
not they're often, you know, all types of student groups if you're actually interested in keeping track of, you know, keeping track of who's doing what, you discover in certain faculty that are active on different types of issues. That just it's like, you know, it's like anything else. If you invest the time, you become aware of the options.
Yeah.
A lot of people just don't invest the time, and they just somehow expect that they sit passively by and things come to them.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So, okay. I also want to talk more about ego because after last night, I thought that was just a super interesting topic. So I
Yeah, the
guess,
halakha last night.
yeah. So do you think apathy and ego go hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, uh, apathy is a form of indulgence of the ego, because the ego will, in essence, it's like when we are first born, we are very egotistical beings. As babies, a baby relates to the world only through their own ego. You know, I'm hungry, I'm comfortable, I'm sleepy, I'm not sleepy. It's like the only way they can relate to the world is like simply from the impulses of what they want. Now, that is supposed to, the more you grow up, the more you become aware. Well, you know, it's not just about my feelings, because there are all these other human beings in the world, and they all have feelings, and not just human beings, but even, you know, animals. They have needs, they have feelings. So why should I only privilege my own feelings above all else? Apathy is a form of selfishness, because it is a form of saying, um, you know, I'm only gonna worry about if I'm hungry. Only gonna worry about if I'm bored, if I'm having fun, and I will make a point of not caring about who is going through what. Um, and apathetic people don't notice things when they, even when Allah, you know, God puts things along their path. So I've known apathetic people who had known acquaintances or friends for many years, and they've never noticed, for instance, that this friend is abused in their family.
Yeah.
And when you discover that the reason they've never noticed is because they simply never cared to notice, while all the signs were there. That, you know, someone who's a friend of theirs has gone through, you know, been abused or been through, and if they were more attentive as human beings and more caring and less selfish and less egotistical, they might have noticed.
Yeah. And do you think that that is in fault to society? Like, I hate throwing around the term society, but like in our American and even the modern society, there's a huge stressing on just protecting like your ego and
Yeah,
like detaching yourself from all the issues.
yeah, you know, that's if we had systems of education that was constantly emphasizing um, caring for others, that, I know, you know, our systems of education, a lot of what we, um, doesn't advocate values of altruism or values of care or values of, um, but that is the product itself of, you know, if there were people who, for instance, said, I don't, I want to enter the field of education and change our educational system, so our educational system is not so apathetic, and our educational system doesn't produce good citizens because it stopped caring about producing good citizens, or it's safer not to produce good citizens to just let uh, things could change if you had enough people that would make that type of commitment. But as long as people don't make the necessary moral commitment and don't put the necessary effort and energy, how can things change?
Um, yeah. So there's this guy that actually reminds me. There's this guy named Peter Singer. Do you know who he is? He's a bioethics professor at Princeton University. He's like 73. He's an Australian philosopher, and
Oh,
his
Singer the philosopher.
hmm
Yeah, I've heard of
yeah.
him. Yeah.
So his argument, for those who don't know, at least in one of his essays, is that it's the obligatory versus the supererogatory, meaning that people today just do like what's obligatory to them, right? They just go
Mhm.
work, they go home, they do whatever, they live their life. They don't think about doing extra, right, for others. And because of that, he argues that most people in the modern day are just sinners, pretty much. That because they're in action, not because of their actions, but because of their inaction, they actually just make themselves unethical as
Yeah.
people. Do you agree? Like, what do you think about that? I thought it was very Islamic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is. Because we all see the world that we ended up generating through. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that people were born in a family, in a community, and your your worth and your sense of meaning was always tied to your service to the family unit, your service to your community. Uh, you know, you were identified by the place you came from, and your sense of value was always dependent on how others, the outside world, perceived your entire community as a unit. As the world became more and more capitalistic, um, the most powerful people in the world, in order to make profits, basically wanted individuals who are effectively like monotone machines.
Yeah.
They have no attachments. They have they can move from one city to another without regard to family or community. They are not going to bother in doing their in creating profits in the workplace. They're not going to have attachments that bother their employer, the community or family. And so increasingly our whole world got reorganized to maximize the profit of the elite
Yeah.
by turning you into this solitary individual who is you and sort of like it's a big deception because they tell you you have to be a solitary individual to feel liberty and freedom. In reality, what they're doing is that they're making you a solitary individual to become a slave in their production process to maximize their profits. So, and this is like the biggest lie in our modern world is that all these kids think that, oh, I care about my freedom, my liberty. I'm free to do whatever I want. Well, in reality, everything they do is uh, it's sort of a form of programming to maximize the profits of those who control the information flow in the world. And so you live your life, with all this belief of freedom, but you actually your tastes, what you like, what you don't like, what you see, what you think is appropriate, what you don't think is appropriate. It's all been carefully engineered by those who hold power. True independence, true freedom is to just break away from I'm not a robot. I'm not here to just maximize your profits and for you to employ me whenever you want and then lay me off or fire me whenever you want. I'm not here just so I am like a machine. I can move anywhere in the world to just perform the job, and as if I don't have family, I don't have community. The true freedom is to challenge this extremely manipulative, extremely oppressive system. And a human being, full humanity, is in fact being a part of what gives you meaning part of your family, a part of a community, a part of especially a moral community. Um, not you're not just a keg in a machine,
Yeah.
which the means of production is what brainwashed people into becoming, and that's like the saddest thing. Like I sit there and especially you see this as it's the same pattern. It's like in high school, you think, oh, I'm an individual and I need my freedom and I need my liberty. And my liberty is that after 18, I make my own decisions. But then you very quickly discover that the way the world is organized is that you don't make your own decisions. You follow a very strictly lined out track that has been engineered and invented for you. You go to college, you summarize your entire being in a little resume, a little piece of paper that's supposed to summarize who you are, and then you go to the job market, and then the job market you have to behave in a very specific and particular way to get a job, and once you get a job, you have to behave in a very particular and specific way to keep your job and to get income. And then when you make money, you buy things. When you buy things, you are in debt, and then you are basically paying off your debt for the rest of your life. And all the idea of yeah, I'm free. It turns out to be a mirage, just a big fat lie.
Right.
And I, to the world, as long as the world continues to organize itself essentially to maximize the profits of that very small percentage of the world that controls capital, we will remain in trouble.
Yeah.
And because that small percentage, that little elite, doesn't care about the environment, they don't care about the health of the globe, they somehow think that they can destroy Earth and somehow that they can get on spaceships and go live maybe in Mars or something. So, the way they act is so irresponsible, so, without a moral compass or a moral care. Um, but they do control, they're the ones that um, quote unquote, are the people who define fashion, people who define what is cool, people who define what is right thinking, what is progressive thinking, what is backward thinking, and people who read a lot, they become very aware of what I'm talking about because the reading is how you discover all of that. Especially when you read about the history of the world, you read about the different, anthropology and the different systems of existence and different cultures, and how there is in the postmodern world there is literally an erasure of culture. All cultures are flattened to um, this things that are basically units of consumption. But part of what, if you've noticed, part of what this same elite has done is that it has persuaded your generation and generations that are after you that there is no point to reading books.
Yeah.
That,
They,
just read what's on the net.
yeah. And they've banned them. Like even what was it? Fahrenheit 451. You know that's banned in some states.
Is it still banned?
I think so. Which is like,
That's scary.
yeah,
I mean, if that book is still banned in some states, or, well, I mean, it banned probably in public schools.
Yeah.
They couldn't
Yeah.
ban it in like being sold in a bookstore. But the whole movement that several states have passed laws that ban the teaching of like critical race theory, which is a huge problem because something like critical race theory is a critique of that elite, which is a racial elite, because they're 99.9% of them are whites,
yeah,
and so they're basically saying you can't learn how to think critically. Um, yeah, it's just yeah,
it's very Orwellian.
it is. I mean, but our you know our world, when now, in the furthest reaches of the world, the entire world uses things like Twitter, or uses things like Instagram, or uses things like Facebook. The entire world is influenced by what they see on Facebook or Instagram, whatever.
And TikTok.
And imagine how the small number of people who actually control these companies,
Yeah.
and they control the algorithms that determine who sees what when. Um, there's a reason that when you look at our world, you see that a very small part of the world is the one that produces the vast majority of material that is consumed by the rest of the world. And it's the world, the part of the world that just not too many years ago had colonized the rest of the world, and we still live in the. We've never broke away from the chains of. But that puts it's like it puts a responsibility on a human being to not just think that they can afford the luxury of being blind and apathetic. That's what's immoral, as Singer says about being blind and apathetic. Is that so? So basically, you've taken the life that God has given you, and you're going to waste it because you're going to live and die not making any difference.
So, if you want to do one last one, I will read it word for word. How big of a sin is lost potential?
Well, Islamically, it's a huge sin because God. I've always say God distributes talent equally and fairly among people in the world. God creates the same number of Mozarts in Europe as in Africa. The only difference is how people exploit the talent. And when God creates you as a human being, God creates you, creates your abilities, creates your potentialities, creates your talents, and effectively, God also knows that if you actually develop your talent you're going to be able to make a difference for this person, this person, this person in the world. But if you don't, then you've failed the people that you were destined to actually help. And that's the real sin, is that, okay, so these people that you could have made a big difference in their life, and you didn't because you chose to be lazy. That's something that, and that is why it's like, if there is no, those people who don't believe in God, it is very easy for them to waste their talent because they don't believe there is anything that they're going to have to answer for ultimately. So if I don't feel like developing my talent and I just want to be apathetic and let it all go to waste, and if I want to be depressed and melancholy and sad and just say what difference does it make, then, you know, and ultimately because, the elite are always trying to convince you that there is no use to resisting. That they're always trying to basically defeat you by telling you don't even try to change anything because nothing will ever change. But if you believe in God, you say, well, there is a God who can change things in an instant. And that's not my decision. My part is to develop all the talents that God has given me and to do my part, and I leave the results to God. And so there's no room for giving up or being depressed, or it's really, you're being empowered by God. It's very difficult to defeat you because you always believe that there's a God, and God can change everything overnight if God wanted. But you know it's as I think I've told you before. It's like, always think from the perspective, not from your perspective, not from the perspective of the privileged person, but always think from the perspective of the person who suffered. The person who suffered, what do you think they will say in the hereafter when when everything is revealed, and there, for instance, the Syrian kid who uh, had to live in camps and starve to death, and witness just horrible, horrible things. What does that Syrian kid? What do you think that kid, or the Afghani refugees, or the Rohingyas, or the Uyghurs in China? What do they think they're going to say about kids of privilege who were born and grew up in the United States? When, what are they going to say when they hear these kids in the hereafter saying, well, there was no use, we didn't try very hard because we weren't convinced that we could change anything? What do you think they're going to say? And that's the hardest thing, because when you realize that the victim, the person who suffered, is not going to be so kind about your apathy, your lack of care, then it really hits home. Then it's like, okay, well, from I thought I could be just selfish and apathetic, but to them, to these people who suffered, it was the worst crime I could commit, because from their perspective, I suffered and you didn't try to help me. You didn't try to do anything. You didn't even try to just protest or just bring attention to my plight, or leave alone, try to actually, like all these refugees who are, you didn't even try to sponsor me to bring me to your country of privilege and help feed me and help clothe me. And that is the most, when we just read, oh, This year, 10 million people are going to starve to death in Africa. And I think to myself, what are these kids who have started going to testify? How are they going to testify in the year after? When they learn that, you know, all these American kids had threw in the garbage all this food, and that this food, they died, longing for just a bite of this food. And then they're asked, well, why couldn't you think about a way to send this food to us? Why didn't you think about a way to help us? So that always, if whenever things get confusing, to gain moral perspective, don't rely on your own point of view. Look at things from the point of view of the disadvantaged, from the point of view of those who suffer. And then you'll gain clarity. Then, the vast majority of questions that you have will be answered as to what your duties are, whether it's appropriate to act this way or not appropriate to act that way. Um, because it really does put things in perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So what advice that you laid out, that there's this structure of the way the world is organized. If people are hearing this and they're like, okay, I don't want that liberty. I want to break out and do what you said. What would be like the top 3 things you would recommend that they do?
I don't know top 3, but um, I mean, the first thing, I believe in awareness and education because, I might not be able to think of all opportunities, and it's unfair to ask anyone to think of all the ways that you could change. But the thing I know for sure is nothing will ever change unless first there is awareness. And for awareness to exist, education. Unless you make the decision, I'm going to read I'm going to read Chris Hedges, or even just I'm going to invest the time to listen to someone like C.G. Whirlman, or in other words, or Noam Chomsky. I'm going to read a book by Noam Chomsky. Uh, I'm going to read a book by Norman Finkelstein. You just make that decision. I'm going to force myself. I'm going to, stop having fun enough to just listen to these people who dedicated all their lives to unveiling the truth and to exposing the lies, and who are effectively saying, please listen to me. You know, so the least you can do is listen to them. Is saying, okay, I'm gonna put in 5 minutes to listen to a video put out by C.G. Whirlman, or I'm going to read an article by Chris Hedges or by Noam Chomsky. And when you gain that awareness, then your moral being starts changing. You're no longer thinking, well, why should I care what my family feels or doesn't feel? Because you become aware that part of that defeating the system is to care about family and to care about community and to care about not and to be fully human and not just a little keg in the machine. And when you gain that awareness, you start thinking of means of resistance. So and who knows? There are people have come up with many different ideas for as means of resistance, from people who created communes that they went and lived in, where they they consume everything, they produce everything they consume, to uh, people created corporations that are more ethical and more morally responsible than, or becoming a healthcare worker that can heal people, or The options could literally be, or even just being a medical doctor who doesn't, murder people when you treat them. You actually treat people for a reasonable price that doesn't send them to the poorhouse every time they need treatment. So the realm of ethical behavior is literally endless. Or becoming a lawyer that doesn't charge people, $1,000 an hour, but charges a reasonable amount to help people in their trouble. You make a reasonable living. It's modest, but you don't need to have a mansion in Beverly Hills as these lawyers that charge over $1,000 an hour. It's just not ethical. And that's the thing, is that you get into trouble. You try to go to a lawyer, you find that the lawyer basically says, well, I'm going to charge you so much that you're going to have to lose your home. What type of world is this? You can't defend yourself without losing your home? Or you get sick and it's like, well, I can't help you unless you have an insurance because my charges, effective, you can't pay them and only insurance company can pay them. What if you couldn't afford to buy health insurance? There are no ethical doctors that will say, I'm just gonna, charge you reasonably where I can live a modest life, but I can take care of your illness. We live in a world that you can't even get a toothache. Just if you have a tooth and you go to a dentist, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. Where is the morality in that? Where is the morality in that? So if you become a dentist and you make a commitment, I know there are tons of people that don't have dental insurance. Actually, the majority of people don't have dental insurance. And you know what? When I find I am going to treat a lot of people for very reasonable prices, people who have a toothache and they don't have dental insurance, I'm not going to send them to the poorhouse just because they got a toothache. That's how you make a difference, and that's how you defeat the system. And yeah. But you see, this is all something that is in your hands and in the hands of your generation. It's like, what type of person am I going to grow up? Am I going to just, insist on, a huge income and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm going to live in the best house, have a yacht, and have a vacation home, and I don't care how many people have to suffer for me to live like this? Or am I going to say, no, I don't need a yacht. I don't need a vacation home. I'm just going to be modest with people, be merciful, be compassionate. And that's really, when if like, what is Islam? Islam is that. It's like, that's being a good Muslim. Is to constantly be compassionate and merciful. Constantly ask yourself, what is the compassionate thing to do? What is the merciful thing to do? Because there are plenty of lawyers that, that were literally, they won't care that you lose your home just to pay the bills. It doesn't make them lose 1 second of sleep. But is that right?
Thank you, Mido. Thank you, Baba. This was excellent. Look forward to the next episode.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, God willing. Thank you.